Migrant gangs have defeated the IRA and the UVF in Northern Ireland and now are the predominant powers in that territory. This is a remarkable turnaround for a country that was ravaged by the Troubles and now sees those deeply entrenched groups being taken over by an Albanian drugs gang that has increased the supply of hard drugs in the territory by 130% since 2022. We are now emboldening some of the most powerful criminal gangs in the world, and to see the people that reduce this country to flames being removed by people who are even worse than them, I think is something that all of us should be concerned about and is a major risk to British national security. And so let's just say that we all know what the IRA and the UVF did. But of course, now to see them defeated in the working class neighbourhoods of Belfast by instead Albanian criminal gangs develops its own worry. Simply because sectarianism may have gone, but to see these organisations, which did have all that power, being superseded, suggests to you just how bad these Albanian criminal gangs are. Well, as I say, the police service of Northern Ireland says that the drug supply has increased by 130%. Now, that is not just having one single effect on the economy in Britain and indeed society in Northern Ireland. Yes, we've seen all the dodgy Turkish barbers that are purely money laundering operations and the American candy shops. I'm pretty certain that most people now live in a town or a city where you have seen these institutions. I personally went down Oxford Street and wanted to buy some, was it Celebrations or Quality Street? It doesn't really matter. But anyway, they are for sale for about £4.50 in Tesco's. The shop that I went into, the American candy shop, wanted £25 for the box. Now, the reason they are so expensive, these American candy shops, is because a wrap of cocaine costs £50. So obviously, if you were to money launder properly, you'd have to destroy, 12 boxes of Quality Street or sell them on the black market for every wrap of cocaine that you put the money from in the till. Obviously, if a box of Quality Street is £25, you only have to destroy 2. And you can see that from a large-scale operation like the Albanians are operating, that is something that's extremely important and means they've got far less to either sell or destroy, depending on what they can do. And obviously, the profits are far higher if you mark up one item rather than destroying 12 of them. But here is the problem. Look, we've talked about Northern Ireland and the fact that there shouldn't be a hard border in Ireland, but I will say one thing. You know, you've got to remember these borders are an opportunity to prevent crime, even though there's no immigration border between Northern Ireland and GB. Obviously, to get on a plane, you normally need a passport, and indeed the ferry, it's purely to check your ID. But that makes it far harder for criminal gangs to operate, whereas, of course, the porous border in Ireland makes it incredibly easy. I don't know what happened to Madeleine McCann, but if the Germans are right, Christian Bruckner put her in the back of a car and drove her from Portugal to Germany. If that's true, I don't know if it was, it would certainly be possible to do it because of the Schengen Agreement. And so, of course, what we do is we allow people to come over from countries like Albania. They get on the small boats at the Channel. They're given accommodation in the UK and can operate these criminal gangs extremely effectively. Now, I will say one thing. I'm going to have a bit of a go at Albanian criminal gangs, but only because of the criminality. I will say one thing. As Islamic nations go, they're not the third world, and they certainly don't believe in creating an Islamic caliphate in the way that some of the more backward countries would do. Also, I'll just say to you that in the case of Kosovo, which is Albania's neighbour, it used to be part of Serbia, and then we invaded on behalf of the Muslim majority against the Serbs and liberated them. We are incredibly popular with the Albanians and incredibly popular in Kosovo. After the September the 11th attack, the Kosovans offered, well, they were the only Islamic nation that offered to fight on behalf of the Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq. Obviously, the Americans refused because it's quite a small, poorly equipped military. But I do think that shows you a direction of travel. So why would I complain about Albanian gangs if they're not trying to destroy the fundamental fabric of society? It's because drug dealing in of itself does cause an undermining of the fabric of society, because it's not just the money that emboldens criminal gangs who can behave in all sorts of ways, but it's also the fact that whilst not everybody who uses recreational drugs is going to end up in rehab, it does cause significant amounts of money. It reduces money from the legitimate economy. It emboldens corrupt organisations. It encourages violence. And of course, there is then the societal damage to families of addicted people. So it is a major problem. I've got a friend of mine who lost his nightclub as a result of COVID and had to turn all of his property into accommodation for illegal migrants. He said when an Albanian checks in, they immediately check out the same day. Straight away, they are out of the system simply because they already have illegal jobs to go to. And once again, let me just say that I don't have a downer on Islam and I don't have a downer on Albanians. Let me just remind you of something. An Albanian who wants to come to the UK to work at Deutsche Bank in the City of London can do that. There is no prohibition whatsoever on these people. They can come here with a working visa or they can get married. The problem is when we're talking about this problem with criminal gangs taking over in Northern Ireland, what we're talking about is very, very simple. People coming over who have no stake in society, who have no job, who have no legitimate income, who have no savings, who have no education. Of course, those people are going to go into criminality. I've always said that societal breakdown comes when people are here with no stake in society. These Albanians don't have a job, they don't have an ability to get a job, and they don't have the education that they need. And similarly, they're not moving into a community where they know anyone. They're just an alien, tribal. They call them the tribal areas, don't they? But fundamentally, I always say you're not going to rob a sweet shop if your uncle owns it, right? That's about stake in society. And of course, we don't have that. Of course, in the past, smuggling in the island of Ireland used to be principally things like fuel and agricultural products. Of course, just to explain to you about the agricultural products, what they do is they count pigs for the purposes of EU farm subsidies in Ireland, then they'd move them over to the UK and backwards and forwards and double count them. And if you live in Fermanagh and South Tyrone, where you've got farms that cover both the UK and Ireland, it's very easy to do that. Similarly, the Irish rate of duty on petrol is lower, and diesel actually is lower than the United Kingdom. So you pump it in Ireland and then pump it out 50 yards away in Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom and make a lot of money on duty. But those are the little tricks that would play because cross-border communities will play the system. What we're talking about now is an ability to bring in really, really hard drugs to the United Kingdom, and that is a significant danger. Of course, it's as hard to bring hard drugs into Ireland as it is to bring it into the UK. The problem we've now got is because we've got people from these gangs so embedded in both the UK and Ireland, it is possible to commit criminality that wasn't possible before. And 130% increase in just 3 years is a really significant thing. It's a bit of an odd statistic. It's doubled and then a third on top, an increase of 130%. So it's 230% of what it would have been previously. That is a significant thing. It's £13 million in cash terms. And the police normally say that they expect to get, between 1% and 5% of drugs seized, which means that you can multiply that 13 million figure by 20 or between 20 and 100 to get the full extent. Can you imagine if it was 100, that there's £130 million worth of cocaine just being done just by Albanian gangs in Northern Ireland? That would be an astonishing figure for such a small territory. Anyway, I have to say to you, I'm no friend to either the IRA or the UVF, but I will say this. The one thing about them was at least they were patriots for their country. These criminal gangs, I think, are in some respects, much more dangerous. Please do donate to the Patriot Club below. Until next time, goodbye.